the double-decker bus.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy.
Hello and welcome. I'm Asuma Katauka and you're watching World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance says that U.S. President Donald Trump recognizes the need to negotiate with his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, despite their differences. This comes as a meeting between Trump and Putin was cancelled earlier. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says no Russian strikes will go unpunished after deadly attacks on Kyiv and southern Ukraine. He has praised long-range Neptune missiles and urged more air defense support from partners as civilian casualties continue to rise. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres condemned Russia's latest wave of large-scale missile and drone strikes on Ukraine, which reportedly killed at least 8 people and caused widespread damage across several regions. He has added that such attacks violate international humanitarian law. U.S. President Donald Trump lifts tariffs on beef, coffee, and other agricultural products to stabilize prices and ease inflation. The move affects products like tomatoes, bananas, aligning with recent agreements with Ecuador, Argentina, and other countries. U.S. President Donald Trump says China will buy U.S. soybeans and other farm goods, adding that both sides held talks on 14 November. Trump expects purchases to begin before spring, though he did not identify which officials were involved in the discussions. U.S. President Donald Trump says that he has decided how to proceed on Venezuela. This comes as top Trump administration officials, military and senior staff gathered at the White House for at least third day in a row to discuss possible military operations in Venezuela. U.S. President Donald Trump has said that he would likely sue the BBC next week for as much as $5 billion after the British broadcaster admitted it wrongly edited a video of a speech he gave, but insisted there was no legal basis for his claim. 9 people were killed and 29 injured after a massive accidental blast at Naugam police station in Srinagar, India. The explosions occurred while forensic teams handled seized explosives linked to a terror module, leaving widespread damage and shockwaves felt kilometers away. Now we start with U.S. President Donald Trump has rolled back tariffs on more than 200 food products, including staples such as coffee, beef, bananas, and orange juice. The new exemptions, which took effect retroactively at midnight on November 13, marks a sharp reversal for Trump, who has long insisted that the sweeping import duties he imposed earlier this year are not fueling inflation. Trump has also told reporters aboard Air Force One that he would move forward with a $2,000 payment to lower and middle-income Americans that would be funded by tariff revenues sometime next year. Let's listen in.
It's a lot of money, but we've taken in a lot of money from tariffs. The tariffs allow us to give a dividend if we want to do that. Now we're going to do a dividend, and we're also going to be reducing debt. We have, because of Biden and others, we have $37 trillion in debt. So we're going to be doing a dividend, which people will enjoy and spend and do what they want. But we're also going to be reducing debt very substantially.
Now for this discussion, we welcome Dr. A.J. Dua. He's a former Secretary of Commerce and Senior Economist, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much for joining us again. Good to see you. Dr. A.J., now looking at this, what are the political calculations that that could have led to the decision to reverse previously imposed tariffs that Trump speaks very highly of, and how could this reshape Trump's trade and economic legacy?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
for getting me onto this discussion. I think there is a clear political angle to it. The president knows that he has faced certain reverses in the previous week when in the gubernatorial elections to at least 3 states and in the mayor elections in New York City. And he has a whole lot of, as we know, elections round the corner, midterm elections early next year. His relenting on agriculture products is essentially to cater to the voters. He realizes that the high import duty on agriculture products of almost daily use, beef, pork, the coffee, and other fruits and other items, is hurting the voter, the common voter. Therefore, despite all his utterances about the money needed to lower the US debt, the huge debt which he talks about, he also realizes that it is costing him politically. So reducing the duties or eliminating altogether certain duties on essential food items or food-related items is meant to serve his political supporters and the others from getting alienated further, as has been demonstrated very recently.
And how might this rollback of tariffs on key food products, as you've mentioned also, affect U.S. domestic inflation and consumer sentiment ahead of this next election?
I think it would certainly impact the inflation which is creeping in. We have noticed, despite whatever President Trump might say, that there has been increased unemployment in the US. Also, there is the ability to buy goods is getting limited if the revenue generation decreases because of unemployment, and at the same time, the goods which were earlier available at a lower cost, suddenly because of his duties, his tariffs had started becoming expensive, and that was hurting the common man, the average American, which he is now trying to rectify. Despite all the talk which he makes about the US being exploited for all these years and there being kind of US debt, the US debt to be serviced, huge debt, etc. He is now facing reality, and this is the way he should have thought about it earlier, but never too late. And I think it could, because the elections are still a little few months off, that this would be helpful.
And how do you think, yes, bless you, how do you think this is affecting the supply chain dynamics in short term?
I think everybody would welcome it. Most of the agriculture products into the US, as we know, come from Latin America and South America because of proximity, no other reason. And also from coffee, etc., from the Far East or Southeast Asia. So all of them would welcome it. There has been, I don't think the climate change which we are experiencing in various forms has adversely affected the production of agriculture products significantly. So the supply is good, but the demand wasn't there, and this will help lift the prices, the global prices, as well as at the same time open the doors for the US public to purchase these goods at a more affordable price.
Yes, indeed. With that, I would like to thank Dr. Ajay for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, we stay in the region. The United States has agreed to significantly reduce tariffs on Swiss goods as well, slashing the rate from 39% to just 15% under a new framework trade agreement announced on Friday. The Swiss government has confirmed the deal after U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer has confirmed that an agreement between the two nations had been reached. Details are expected to be released later today. The announcement follows weeks of negotiations, including meeting last week between Richmond Chair Johann Rupert and U.S. President Donald Trump. Rupert had previously described the high tariffs as a misunderstanding between the two nations, something he believed would be resolved quickly. Swiss Economy Minister Guy Parmelin, who was in Washington this week for talks, stated that virtually everything had been clarified, though no further details were provided. While Swiss exports to U.S. have taken a hit, falling by 14% in the last quarter, this potential tariff reduction could help stabilize the Swiss economy and prevent further job losses. Rupert had stressed that the lower tariffs would be crucial for Swiss industry, which has been heavily impacted by the punitive duties. Let's listen into what Parmelin, the Swiss economy minister, has said.
Merci, Madame la Vice. Aujourd'hui, je peux vous annoncer que la Suisse et les États-Unis ont trouvé un terrain d'entente concernant les droits de douane additionnels, notamment grâce à la nouvelle dynamique suscitée par l'engagement du président américain. Cela représente un pas important pour nos entreprises exportatrices et pour la stabilité de nos relations commerciales. Premièrement, les États-Unis ont accepté de réduire le niveau des droits de douane supplémentaires. Pour la Suisse, ces droits seront désormais plafonnés à 15%, ce qui, je l'ai dit, nous place sur un pied d'égalité avec l'Union européenne. Deuxièmement, les produits qui bénéficiaient déjà d'exemptions continueront d'en profiter. Cela concerne notamment les produits pharmaceutiques, certains produits chimiques, l'or et les semi-conducteurs.
Now for this discussion, we welcome back Dr. AJ Dua. He's a former Secretary of Commerce and a senior economist, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Dr. AJ, for staying with us. Now looking at this, how could this reduction of U.S. tariffs to 15% impact Swiss exports, trade balances, and also particularly in luxury goods and manufacturing? As we know, U.S. imports a lot of them from Switzerland or Swiss.
I think the impact would be very positive. The major exports of Switzerland to the United States had been watches, the luxury watches, pharmaceuticals, particularly branded ones, chocolates, and certain electronic products, as well as certain semiconductors, all of which were being imported in considerable volumes in the US, and the Swiss economy was being impacted by certain, one doesn't know what exactly were the reasons which irked the president of US against Switzerland when he adopted a different yardstick against Switzerland compared to the European Union. But now that he has relented, yes, the Swiss companies have had to agree to make a certain amount of investment. The figure being put is $200 billion over the next 3 years. Yes, the US, that might, as of now, be looking steep for a small country, but it is possible for the large Swiss conglomerates to be able to undertake such investment and they might be willing to do it because of the size of the US market and the fact that if President Trump or his successors, they were to again impose duties on imports from Switzerland, then they get hurt. So it might be better for them to undertake the investment by borrowing funds from the US financial institutions, stock markets, etc., and put the money there, making use of their technology and continue to cater to the US economy. So I think it's a good move. It gives President Trump also a face-saving device that he's been able to get a commitment of $200 billion of investment, which is large by all account, and will help him kind of pursue his MAGA, the Made in America, or Make America Great Again.
Right, and how do you think what could be the potential macroeconomic effects of this rollback of tariffs have on U.S. consumers and domestic industries?
I don't think adverse impact would be significant because the U.S. industry, I don't think luxury watches were being made in the U.S. They were more of electronic, the middle order or the lower end products. The U.S. had been importing these largely from Europe, and in which Switzerland had a place, pride of place. Similarly, the pharmaceuticals, the branded ones, we're not talking about the generics which come from, say, China, India, etc., but the real branded stuff. And for whether it's the climate of Switzerland for their manufacturing these drugs, or their ability to adhere to standards, etc. And that I must emphasize that the Swiss industry, in whatever it produces, it might be even handmade, certain products, they invariably adhere to very high quality standards. So it will help, I think, both the sides without an adverse impact upon anyone, helping the workers workers and the investors in Switzerland, and in the US, the consumer, high-end consumer, as well as the middle end, the middle class, all would benefit from this. So a very positive macroeconomic effect.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much for joining us today, Dr. E.J. Dua, and sharing that insight. Now we move on to our next news. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance states that U.S. President Donald Trump recognizes the need to negotiate with his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, despite their differences. In an interview, Vance has added that he has heard people criticize Trump for talking to Putin, but also stated that it is necessary in order to bring peace. These statements from Vance comes as a meeting between Trump and Putin in Budapest, Hungary, was postponed earlier. Moscow and Washington stated that the meeting will take place when suitable conditions are created. Both leaders last met in mid-August in Alaska to discuss an end to the Russia-Ukraine war. Now for this discussion, we welcome Professor Vasilin Popovsky. He's a professor and vice dean at Jindal Global Law School, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us again. Good to see you. Professor, looking at this, what do you think, what political factors would be influencing the timing and location of Trump-Putin meeting if it were to happen?
Well, I don't think it will happen very soon. There is no point. The meeting in Budapest was cancelled because at some point the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, basically repeated all these demands, and they are absolutely nonsense demands, for the Ukrainian army to withdraw from the 4 regions, for sanctions to be lifted, and for the government in Ukraine to be replaced by a pro-Russian government. And all this, obviously Marco Rubio, after his correspondence with Lavrov, reported to Donald Trump that there is no point to meet because it will be absolutely useless meeting, and Trump will look very badly in the public opinion of the world if he meets again and nothing comes out of that meeting. Certainly after that, and there was some exchange of mutual threats, the Russians were talking about some renovating old system, Burevestnik, and to start some new testing of that old missile. Americans responded that we have much more weapons, you can do whatever you want to do, we are not scared. And later we see in Kremlin the language becoming a little bit more mild, and they kind of said, no, we didn't mean that, we want to continue negotiations. But obviously, these are like zigzagging messages from Washington and Moscow. And certainly it comes also what J.D. Vance is saying, that yes, we can continue some talks with Moscow, but there is no prospect here. Putin is not stopping killing civilians in Ukraine. for some meaningful negotiation, there should be a ceasefire first. And if Putin rejected 8, 9, 10 times, even a short-term, 30-day ceasefire, there is really no point to talk to Putin. Again, I don't see this happening soon, although Russians are now trying to please Trump because this is the only thing left for Russia. Russia had no good news on the battlefield. Russia is suffering, its economy is collapsing, sanctions are working very well. Ukraine is hitting the oil refineries, and the biggest depot in Novorossiysk in the Black Sea has been hit by Ukrainian drones. Effectively 30, even more percent of the Russian oil export is affected by Ukrainian drones. And these are always very, very bad news for Putin, bad news for Kremlin. And they still kind of pray for one last opportunity to talk to Trump and somehow to try to get something out of that talk. But even that is meaningless. Trump is not going to support Putin anymore. He realized how long time, 10 months already we are in this year, and absolutely zero achievement of all these attempts to negotiate with Putin, which means that there should be a time to stop even those attempts and move into a harsh language, into demand for ceasefire, more sanctions, more isolation of Vladimir Putin until he realizes that he's left alone in the world and nobody is supporting him, apart from North Korea maybe, but nobody else.
And Professor, do you think, as we know previously, Trump was very open about, his motive of pushing Putin into a ceasefire or coming into peace deal with Ukraine was getting a Nobel Peace Prize. But now, do you think his motive could be shifted towards upcoming election, as with the U.S. government shutdown and a lot of things going on in U.S., his popularity is going down?
Yes, you're absolutely right, Asuma. His priorities shift more towards the domestic audience. He faces a lot of elections. He faces a lot of other internal disbalances within the United States. So for him, Russia-Ukraine is left not even in the top 10 priorities anymore, which is, again, as I said, a very bad news for Russia, because they couldn't get anything out of Donald Trump, apart from language, apart from statements, apart from talk, but that talk is also empty. It doesn't give Russia any advantages. Yes, the priorities are shifting, and Trump will focus much more on the forthcoming elections next year. And but in the meantime, we see support on the law level, on the level of Marco Rubio, the foreign secretary. We see supportive messages that United States will continue sanctioning Russia and supporting Ukraine, which is probably at this point the maximum that Ukraine and Zelensky can achieve, to have somehow Europeans in a strong support, but Americans still behind that, at least not damaging the situation. Vladimir Putin wanted Trump to be on his side, and he achieved the opposite. Now Donald Trump is not only on the 0 point, but he's even in the negative for Russia point.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Professor Popovsky for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next news as well. Now we stay on this topic. UN spokesperson Stephanie Dujarric has said that UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres strongly condemns large-scale missile and drone attacks by the Russia on several Ukrainian regions. This comes as Ukrainian officials have reported that Russia launched a heavy drone and missile attack on Ukraine early on November 14, killing 6 people in Kyiv and 2 more in the south by strikes on energy facilities, apartment buildings, and infrastructure. The spokesperson said that the UN chief has reiterated his call for a full, immediate, and unconditional ceasefire as a first step towards sustainable peace in Ukraine. Let's listen into what the spokesperson has shared.
The Secretary General strongly condemns today's large-scale missile and drone attack by the Russian Federation on several Ukrainian regions, reportedly killing at least 6 people in Kyiv and 2 people in the city of Chormonorsk. The attack is also reported to have caused many injuries among civilians and damage to residential and energy infrastructure, as well as damage to the embassy of the Republic of Azerbaijan in Kyiv. Attacks against civilians and civilian infrastructure violate international humanitarian law. They are unacceptable wherever they occur and must end immediately. The Secretary General recalls the principle also of the inviolability of diplomatic premises. The Secretary General reiterates his call for a full, immediate, and unconditional ceasefire as a first step towards a just, comprehensive, and sustainable peace in Ukraine, one that fully upholds Ukraine's sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity within its internationally recognized border, in line with the United Nations Charter, international law, and relevant UN resolutions.
Now for this discussion, we welcome back Professor Vasilin Popovsky. He's a professor and vice dean at Jindal Global Law School, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Professor, for staying with us. Now, looking at this, how could these developments, how are these influencing Western security assistance towards Ukraine, and especially as the conflict now expands beyond traditional front lines, also looking at Ukraine's recent use of long-range Neptune military missiles?
Yes, first of all, it's welcoming to see a statement from United Nations. Unfortunately, not very many such, but this time it's very clear that United Nations, the Secretary General of the United Nations, stands very firmly accusing Russia for those strikes that kill civilians and target buildings and hospitals and schools. And we see a lot of civilians being hit, a lot of civilians being injured, and that's obviously the task of the Secretary General is to speak for the victims of those violations of international humanitarian law, war crimes committed almost daily by Russia. And for that matter, yes, your question is about how to strengthen the air defense, and it is a serious issue. There are discussions to supply more systems. Patriot is a very strong system to help Ukraine to gun down most of the missiles and drones in order to protect its civilians in those big cities. So obviously Ukraine needs more such support, military equipment, air defense systems. And the Europeans are also very aware of that, and they are supplying Ukraine with those systems, but obviously they need to be always more, because it's a large territory. Ukraine is, in geography, it's almost half of Europe, continental Europe. So it's a large territory that needs to be protected from the Russian missiles and drones. That work will continue. It's good also to add to that the voice of the United Nations to make it more global and to continue that support, because otherwise, with the forthcoming winter, it will be a tough winter for many Ukrainians. That they realize that, we realize that, and for that matter, there needs to be a united front in support of Ukraine, including military. Effectively, I would say everything that Ukraine needs in terms of military support, it should be given by the coalition of the will. All the Europeans, but also Americans, Canadians, Japanese, Australians, and everybody else who supports Ukraine with military. And there are many countries, actually. There are more than 50 countries that are supplying Ukraine with military assistance.
Yes, with that, I would like to thank Professor Vasilin Popovsky for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now moving on, during the international jurists meeting in Caracas, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has delivered an anti-war message to the U.S., urging Washington to stop the insane hand that brings bombing, killing, and war to South America and the Caribbean. He has stressed the need to understanding growing threats in the Caribbean Sea from U.S. military actions. The remarks came as Washington announced Operation Southern Spear, targeting narco-terrorists in the region under U.S. Southern Command, which oversees military activity across 31 countries in South and Central America and the Caribbean. This is what Nicolas Maduro has shared.
Es el pueblo de Estados Unidos a quien me dirijo en este momento, frente a estos 100 juristas de 34 países, para decirle: paren la mano enloquecida de quien ordena bombardear, matar y llevar una guerra a Sudamérica, al Caribe. ¡Detengan la guerra! Queremos otra Gaza ahora en Sudamérica. ¿Qué dice el pueblo de Estados Unidos? ¿Quieren una nueva Afganistán? ¿Quieren de nuevo Vietnam? ¿Quieren Libia otra vez? O lo que es peor, ¿quieren una nueva Gaza en Sudamérica? Déjeme decirle que no y que no. Y que aquí triunfará la paz, el derecho internacional.
Meanwhile, President Donald Trump said that he had made up his mind on U.S. policy towards Venezuela, as his administration carried out strikes on alleged drug trafficking boats in the Caribbean Sea and Eastern Pacific Ocean. Let's listen into what President Donald Trump has said.
I sort of have made up my mind, yeah. I mean, I can't tell you what it would be, but I sort of made up my mind.
What do you say to some of your supporters who might not be excited about another foreign campaign?
Well, we'll see what happens. I mean, I can't tell you what it is, but we made a lot of progress with Venezuela in terms of stopping drugs from pouring in.
That's all we have time for. Keep watching News 6 World for more news updates from around the world.